Today, we're going to talk about 3 keys to becoming a confident NSA. I realize that a lot of the people who attend our classes or watch our videos are newer notaries. Some of them are longtime notaries and they just like the refresher that we give you. But if you're a newer notary, or if you're just not a very confident notary signing agent, or you want to increase your confidence, then we're going to talk about 3 keys. Now, these are basic. You're going to read them and go, yeah, I already know that. I'm going to give you the titles and you're going to say, yeah, we get that. But we're going to talk about how important these basics are in order for you to become a confident notary. When I started out, I was not confident at all. I faked it, and my mom kind of told me that's a big part of confidence. If you don't have it, is faking it. And you do that enough, eventually you will get confident. But there were certain things that I did to ensure that my confidence was backed up by knowledge, right? Or, not just totally faking it and making a lot of mistakes, which I really did initially. So we're going to kind of go over what those are and what we found, and then just using the knowledge that we have as a signing agency to talk about errors and issues that could have been avoided if we applied these basics. So let's get right into it. So the first one, educate yourself. So knowledge, skills, and character traits that will help you become confident in your work as a notary public or a notary signing agent. So the first thing that I always talk about when you're a notary signing agent is you should know your Notary 101. And this is something that you can do if your state has a notary handbook, which I believe all of them do, or at least something. Some states have like a very little tiny notary handbook, but know it, right? Read it. When I did the notary class this year to read or to become a notary again, I actually let my commission lapse. So I had to become a notary again. I had to take the 6-hour class. Before the class, I read the handbook. Now, these are written in jargon that we don't use every day, right? That's why we take, like in California, there's a class, and the class is a little different. If you compare the study guide they give you versus the handbook, it's written in more common terms that are more understandable, right? But read the actual handbook. And if you don't understand it, look it up, right? And that's where the second point here is search the web. We live in the best time to learn anything, right? You can become pretty good at pretty much anything by checking it out on YouTube or just searching Google, searching the internet. But that's my first suggestion, is be confident in your notary work, right? So an NSA is someone who has knowledge of real estate documents, but they've got to be a notary, right? So know your notary stuff. Now, that doesn't replace experience, but it gives you that foundation, and you can be confident in that foundation that you have. Meet other agents too. So in your life, you probably know other notaries, right? As many as there are in this class right now, and we're all together. You can privately chat each other if you want to get to know each other. If you want, we can all be on the same email and get to know each other in that way. But most likely, a notary in your life. Most notary signing agents don't just pull it out of the blue, right? There's normally someone in their life that's like, hey, I'm a notary signing agent. I've made a little money, or I used to do that. So get to know them. That will also help you. And when it comes to the Notary 101, take as many general notary work jobs as you can, right? And you can do those right away. So if there's a 1-page document, take it, and like I said, search the web. So if you're nervous, even with that, that's okay. Search the web. You'll see, even just with our YouTube, there's over 30 free videos, right? That will give you a good little bit of confidence to get you doing your first job, right? So that's my first point that kind of led into other points, right? Is that be confident in just your notary basics. And really the notary basics are this: know how to identify your signer, complete your notary journal if your state requires that, and fill in acknowledgments and jurats, right? That is like very basic. And you can search that on the web, and you can learn how to do that if you need to learn how to apply what's in your notary handbook. Now, as for a notary signing agent, you need to know the basics of real estate documents, right? So real estate 101. Now, I think it's important to learn the different kinds of products, different kinds of loans, as well as the players. So before you start working as a notary signing agent, it's important to know who you're working with, the lender, the settlement agent or the escrow company, the borrowers, even taking it a little bit further, maybe the funders, the underwriters, all of those people. When you know at least what the game looks like, you're going to have confidence, right? So if the borrower says, "Man, I don't like these documents. This fee doesn't look right." Well, who are you going to call? Probably the borrower's loan officer, right? So when you know the players, or who you're dealing with, that's going to give you confidence. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be an expert at it, not at all. When I went into it, I didn't know anybody, but like I said, that made me not a super confident notary, right? But if you know just the basics, and as a notary signing agent, you need to also know the critical documents in the set of loan docs. Now that can seem intimidating, right? There may be 150 pages. The critical documents represent maybe less than a quarter of those pages. And after we do the slide, I'm going to show you some of those documents. We're going to look at, in a refinance set of documents, we're going to look at the documents that I think you should be confident with. And I'll tell you them now: the note, the deed of trust, the closing disclosure, and the settlement statement. Those, to me, in a refinance set of documents, or a HELOC might not have all of those documents, or they might be named different, but those are the four main documents that you need to know at the signing that will increase your confidence with the signers. Those are the ones that have the information the borrowers are most likely going to be curious about. And they represent the most important documents to the borrowers most of the time. So that's what I think you should be knowledgeable about very basically. Now, I'm not saying that you need to go and purchase all of the notary signing agent classes. In fact, I'm saying the opposite, right? I'm saying that you need to know these basics. You can take in this knowledge on your own. So you can educate yourself in a lot of ways. There's a lot of different kinds of classes out there with varying price ranges, and they offer all sorts of different things. The basic might just be the online class, all the way to you're going to now have access to the creator of the class, the largest package, and it could cost you a few $1,000s, over $1,000, to what I believe maybe not necessarily be super confident. So you've done the class, but then you're like, oh, okay, I'm still not confident. So I think that you can become a notary signing agent with just the basics. So the basics are, your notary 101. So you know your state's handbook well. You can do that on your own. You can search the web if you don't understand it. You can talk to other notaries, other notary signing agents. And we also have, and that's kind of the benefit of coming to this class, is that it's free. And then you can ask questions at the end of the class. And that's why for those that watch this on YouTube, it's beneficial to come to the live class, right? Because now all of a sudden you kind of have that resource, and it's free. You didn't have to pay over $1,000. It's free to you. So I think that that's to increase that knowledge or confidence, to give you that foundation to become a confident signing agent. You need to know your notary 101 and your real estate 101. So the different kinds of products, who you're dealing with. I say it's corny, but the players, the people that we're dealing with in this industry. And then knowing the critical documents. That's going to get you signings, right? And then the more signings that you take, the more your confidence will increase. So that's what I think you need to know to become a confident signing agent. Now, I'll give you a little, I know, right? I could talk on one slide with very few words. I could talk for 20 minutes, but I will give you a little example. So my sister-in-law was a notary, but there was many years that she didn't do anything with the notary, but she was a signing agent at one time, and she just became a signing agent again. And I was watching her, and that's where I kind of like came up with this class ideas. Is she went all these years without being a notary and not being in the industry, and then she goes and does a signing, and she's very confident. Now, I was someone that needed to do the job well. I needed to have a lot of information, right? I needed more than the Notary 101. But then I see her, and she has Notary 101 and the Real Estate 101. That's the, like, she has other industry experience, but maybe not on the signing table job. And she has all this confidence. And it made me realize you really don't need to know, what every single person in this industry does. You just need to know the basics to feel like, okay, I'm not a total newbie. You might be a total newbie, but you have this resource, just a basic resource. So the knowledge doesn't have to be, you don't have to pay a lot to get it. This is all stuff that you can educate yourself on. And you really, to get out on the signing, your first signing, you just need to know these basics. Okay, next up, be prepared. Well, this is another one you're like, duh. But the truth is, a lot of notaries get on the job and they're not prepared. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that means. And it's a very short slide because it's pretty simple, I think. So first step, once you get a job, the person who gives you the job, ask as many questions as you can, right? So ask about what kind of documents we're going to sign, who the signers are, what the stipulations of the signing are, what's expected of you. So now the person who gives you the signing might not have all of that information, but most likely they can direct you to someone who does. Or they'll have a website like ours, whatever platform we're using that you're accepting a job on, will have instructions. And our clients, most of the time, for notary signing agent stuff, so like real estate stuff, they will have instructions too. So you want to ask questions on those instructions and read them all. Now that can be overwhelming. I know that in the past, and I think over the past few years, we've kind of tightened up our instructions, but I know at one point we had like several pages worth of instructions, and that's overwhelming. And we've had notaries say that's too many instructions. I believe that our instructions are smaller now. We've kind of gone through and edited them down really to be specific to each product, but it's also kind of a resource. So if a client has 3 pages of instructions, you're all of a sudden kind of getting insight into this notary world that you didn't have before you saw those instructions, right? So even if there may be client specific, there's going to be a lot of general instructions that will help you in your notary practice in general. I'll give you an example of why it's so important to read all instructions and then ask questions. Now, this happened this week. This was kind of the issue of the week that I dealt with a little bit. I think the rest of our team is dealing with it and still dealing with it right now. But we had a notary, and I could see that they were new on our platform. That doesn't mean that they're a new notary. Maybe they're a new signing agent, or maybe they're new to just the platform. Maybe they've been doing signings. I don't know. But I could tell they did about 10 files on our platform. And it's kind of a rural area. We use the new notary. We use new notaries all the time. And they had to scan the documents. This was a refinance loan. They scanned the documents, uploaded them. I think there was like a second trip. There was an additional document. So they did the loan signing, then they had to go home, print docs, and then schedule another signing to do like a deed. Okay, so we had a holiday Monday, right? Monday was Labor Day. So the documents should have shipped Tuesday for Wednesday delivery. Thursday, we realized they still weren't tracking. When I asked the notary said, oh, I thought that I had to hold on to them for 10 days before I ship them. Now, if you're an experienced NSA, you know, I mean, I don't know what client does that. Maybe there's a product out there that someone does that. That is never something that our company does. We advise you, if you've watched any of our videos, attended any of our classes, when do you drop the docs? As soon as you can. Now, some clients might ask to review the scans first. Coast to Coast says drop the documents, scan them if you have to, or if it's a requirement of the signing, and then drop them, right? So immediately is when we ask you to drop them, or as soon as you've fulfilled all of the signing stipulations, right? So he held on to them. He shipped them yesterday, which was good. There were additional errors. We won't necessarily go into that. But that's where he had an understanding that was incorrect, right? If he would have read our instructions, he would have seen ship the documents right away, right after. So that's where reading everything and asking questions. So what should have happened is maybe that was his understanding. Maybe that's what he thought. Read the instructions and then ask more questions, right? There's something that Hannah, who's been with Lisa and the company since the beginning, she always says, and we say together, is our favorite employees are the ones that bug us all the time, right? They're not really bugging us, but they're asking us questions. Those are our favorite employees. Those are our favorite notaries too, because you're paying attention, right? You're present. And that's something that I thought about too. I almost made that a slide, but being present, being focused. I think that, and I was trying to go back to when I was a new notary before actually, I think my confidence really didn't come for a few years, but but that also had to do with my age. I was very young. I was 18 when I started. But when I was thinking about being confident, we sometimes as people, we have this like mechanism, right? Maybe a defense mechanism that when we're nervous, sometimes we're so focused on ourselves that we aren't really present. We're not really paying attention to what we're doing. We're just kind of just like anxiously getting through it. We just want to be done with it. That's just because we're nervous. We're starting out, and we're focused on ourselves instead of what we're doing. But if you're very present and very deliberate, that confidence is going to come because it's going to pay off, right? So in the preparation for the signing, ask a lot of questions. I'm going to give you some tips, practical tips on that. What are some of the questions? This is what you're going to want to ask on a loan signing. You're going to want to make sure that you have a contact number. So where when you are at the signing, if the signer has questions or if there's an issue, you know who to contact and get an immediate response, or at least a very quick response. Updating our website or emailing people, there may be delays, right? So with our website, we get your emails. We try to handle those within 15 minutes. But what if it got super busy, might be a rush, there might be a little bit of a delay. So get a contact number. That's super important. That might be the most important thing. My sister-in-law, who did a signing recently, it was her first signing back in all those years, and there was an issue on the documents on how they were prepared. The signature line missed. The one signer's full name wasn't spelled correctly. So she called me. She had a contact, right? So if you're doing work with a signing agency, make sure you can get a contact of a live person. And any good signing agency ought to have a live person that's available for questions. If you're working directly with an escrow company or with a real estate agent or a lender, make sure you get a direct number that you can contact someone for questions before, during, and after the signing. That's kind of my biggest tip there in terms of making you more confident. Because what if you get to the signing and the signer has a question and you're like, okay, I guess we have to end the signing, or let me email someone, and then you're waiting there and you don't get a response, or maybe it's after hours, right? That's when a lot of our work is done, is in the evenings or on the weekends or early mornings. So you want a number of someone that you can call. That's going to increase your confidence. And listen, You're going to be nervous. You might not know what to do. That person's going to be able to help you. Now, you don't have to say, hey, I don't know what to do. You just, and that's kind of the beauty of being a notary signing agent, right? Is that when it comes to how the docs are drawn, or if there's issues with the docs, it's not our responsibility to know that, right? So it's not inappropriate to call someone and ask them. That is what you ought to do, right? So ask questions, have a contact, read instructions, and give yourself time. Now, giving yourself time before, during, and after the signing means if you can, prepare as far ahead of time as you can. This was something that I never did in the early half of my career as a notary. I winged it always, right? And that I did it, I mean, from the time I was a new notary to when I was a confident notary. Now, when I was a confident notary, I'd done it enough that I knew what to look out for. But when I was a new notary, I didn't, which meant I made so many mistakes. There were so many printing issues. I made just bad judgment calls. So because I didn't give myself enough time, right? I couldn't, time management was not my forte. It's gotten better over the years because I know the benefits of it, right? And it did, increase my confidence when you give yourself more time. And I mean that from like every aspect of it. Sometimes we don't have that luxury as notary signing agents. Sometimes we get documents right before the signing, or the night before, or early morning before the signing. And that means that preparing the documents, we're not going to have a ton of time. But give yourself time on the way to the signing. Running late is the worst feeling, and it can get you in trouble, and that can be a major complaint. And it kind of like throws your whole signing off, right? When you get there late, you don't, maybe you're worried about the signer's time. A lot of times they only have allotted a certain amount of time, right? And it's going to make you appear less confident, right? So give yourself time, map the location, print the documents with as much when you get them, right? As soon as you get them, don't wait until 30 minutes before the signing or an hour before the signing. Those are the signings that you're going to have printer issues with. And I know that, just from personal experience. And nothing's worse than having to call a borrower and say, hey, I'm having an issue. I'll be there, 30 minutes. Can we reschedule it? Push it out. That can be, most borrowers are cool with it, but you're going to get a borrower who's not, right? And we don't want you to start your signing like that. At the signing table, and I think when you're a new notary, you feel like there's eyes on you when you're at the signing table. And so you're worried, you want to kind of rush yourself because you don't like the staring at you while the borrowers are waiting. But when you're confident, you just know that this is the process, right? So you slow it down, give yourself time. If a borrower asks a question or they want to look at a particular document, take your time to get there. And that's it's going to help the borrowers see that you know what you're doing and you're deliberate and they're not judging you. You might think they're looking at me and they know that I don't know what I'm doing. If you know your Notary Note 101, you're halfway there. If you know the basics and you know the critical documents, you know what you're doing, right? You can be confident, even if it's your first signing. If you know those things, you can go in there with confidence. And, even if it is your first signing, you don't tell them that it's your first signing, but they're not going to be judging you that way either. I think now maybe I'm saying this and you're like, yeah, we don't feel that way. That's how I felt as a notary when I first started out. And even sometimes, more recent years, I'll feel that way. And then I remember, hey, I know what I'm doing. I know those basics. I even know maybe a little bit more. But even if you just know those basics, you don't have to feel like there's eyes on you and you have to rush yourself. Give yourself time. And after the signing too, that's, I think, really critical, is making sure that those documents are perfect, or as perfect as you can get them. So triple checking your work, slowing it down, not rushing. So keeping your schedule open enough when you take signings, so where you're not, oh, I just have to make this cutoff right now, so I'm going to drop them without looking at them. Or, oh, I think they're good. Drop. No, review those documents. Make sure they're good. Another little tip when you're starting out that's going to increase your confidence. and give you a little more of that education we talked about on the first slide, right? Is even if the signing doesn't require scan backs, if you're working with like a signing agency, scan those docs, upload them to the site, and ask the client or the signing agency or whoever you're working with, hey, can you review those documents to make sure they're, they meet your standards and they look good to you? Maybe don't do that with an escrow agent because they're going to be like, what do you mean? That's your job, right? But with a signing agency, you can do that and we can help you. So we'll review those documents. Just say, hey, can you review these? Make sure that they look good. I just want to make sure that they're perfect. Review them, give you feedback, right? That signing I told you about earlier where the notary thought that he had 10 days to drop those documents when he in fact did not, and they were late. When I reviewed those documents, there were issues. There were two issues. One, the scans were cut off. The actual documents weren't cut off, thank goodness, but just the scans. But the lender can't fund on a scan that's cut off, right? If it doesn't look complete, the lender can't fund, which means there was a rate lock. So there's more consequences to this kind of signing, or this particular signing. But the scans were cut off. So we gave him some training, right? We basically gave him some free education by letting him know, hey, your scans are cut off. Those aren't going to work. Make sure to review your scan and that it's complete. So basically the top of the forms was cut off so you couldn't see the name of the forms on legal size documents. And also three things. The right to cancels weren't signed and the Patriot Act wasn't completed. And if you're new and you're like, I don't know what those forms are, watch our videos and we're going to look at some of those forms after the slide. But basically, that's a little tip on how to make sure that you can or how to increase your confidence on when you're a new notary on your actual work is scan those documents, upload them, ask someone to review them and give you their feedback. And they'll let you know if there's any issues and then you can take note for the next signing, right? Okay, so that's my ideas on preparation. Last subject is how important it is to take accountability. So I believe that taking ownership allows you to grow and empowers you to do better, right? Now this one's hard. It's hard. I realized this week I had a conversation with my husband and I was not very nice. And I thought, why was I not nice? Like, what was it? Oh, because I was defensive, right? And when you're defensive, it's not conducive to growth, right? So part of taking accountability is knowing your roles and responsibilities, right? So that kind of goes to education. So you need to know what is expected of you as a notary signing agent, right? It's to do your notary part, your notary 101, correct. And to know the basics of real estate and real estate documents. That's your role. You might not know all of the details of what that entails. And a part of that is just doing the job, and that can be kind of like a catch-22 because you're like, well, I'm a new notary and I'm not getting work. How can I learn if I'm not getting work? Taking everything you can take, starting with general work and saying yes to as many signings and putting yourself out there, calling signing agencies, going into these boutique escrow agencies and giving them your card and saying, hey, if you ever need a notary, general notary work or loan signings, I'm here for you. But a lot of, and not everyone knows about this resource, but our YouTube channel, if you watch our videos, you're going to learn a lot about your roles and responsibilities. But that's kind of part of taking accountability because you might think, well, that's not my job. So if we call you and say, hey, it looks like you missed a signature, if you don't, it's your job to make sure that all the signatures are there, you might say, hey, that's not my job. But that's part of knowing your roles and responsibilities. In general, though, if someone reaches out to you or questions your work or what you've done, like I said, try not to be defensive. And this is all about your mindset. You want to work as a team. So I know if you're anything like me, I am very defensive when someone says I did something wrong. and it's something I really need to work on. Maybe you are the same as me. But I've learned in business that you really can't be defensive to your client, right? If you want them to continue to be your client, you want to take it and think of it like, my teammate says I need to fix something. Okay, let me fix it. So you want to work as a team. If someone says they need something from you, your first reaction might be defensive in your mind, but don't let your client know that and do it, right? The more you just take accountability and fix whatever needs to be fixed or do whatever needs to be done, the better you're going to look and the more confident you're going to be. Errors are very helpful in teaching you things. We don't want you to make errors. Nobody wants the errors. They're going to happen from time to time. But if your client knows that you're going to fix it and you're not going to complain and you're not going to ask for more money, if it's your error, of course. If it's not your error and it's another trip, you of course can ask for more money. But if they know that, they're not going to be mad at you and they're going to keep getting work. We think of our job as a signing agency to our client as our job is to make our clients look good. And if notaries, as you as a notary, do the same thing, you're going to make partnerships. And that's something that we always say on our classes is that you want to work to making partnerships, not money, and the money will follow the partnerships. I have heard some people, when I say this, they've said, that's stupid. I'm in this for the money. Well, yeah, that's why we work, right? Most of the time. Sometimes we just love it. Sometimes people work and they don't need the money. That is not me or most of us, but there is a small percentage of the population that does that. But if you're working towards making partnerships, you're going to keep getting those calls. So it's not like I'm saying, oh, don't do this for the money. I'm saying do this for the partnerships and the money. And if you focus on the partnerships, the money's going to come, right? That's our philosophy. That's what's worked with us, even when you lose clients, right? And you might feel like, oh my gosh, I have an example. Let me just give you an example. I had a new notary that did some quality control work for us. And we said, hey, we'll give you our loan signings. She went into an office and did quality control work. She also took signings for another company. And she made a kind of a bad judgment call. So she did the work for a signing agency, a smaller signing agency, but the owner actually contracted her directly. So the owner called her and assigned her to the signing. She did the signing and then she thought, I'm going to bring donuts and leave my business card to the office of where these documents belong. So instead of FedExing them, she hand delivered them and brought donuts and her card. The client, the signing agency, that person took that as kind of like poaching, right? Because she was not directly hired by that escrow agency. And it kind of looked like when you give your card to an escrow agency, it kind of looks like you're, trying to take their work. That's not what she meant. She was excited to do her signing. So she was like, I'm going to drop them off some donuts, and leave my card. She didn't see that that would be an issue, right? And that signing agency said they wouldn't use her anymore, right? Because it's competitive. And this industry is tough, Someone is always trying to take your client. That's kind of what I've learned. So a lot of times, it's cutthroat. Someone will just say, well, I'm not using you anymore. That was an excellent learning moment. Humbling, and she was very defensive at first, but then when she just took accountability, it made it better. There's not one signing agency. There's not a monopoly on this work. So if something like that happens, take it as a learning opportunity. You have now learned more about what your role and responsibility is, and then continue on. Focus on those partnerships. I told that notary, and I don't know if she ever did, but I told her to call that signing agency and just explain she didn't mean it that way. And they would never hear that issue from her ever again. I don't know if she ever did, but it goes to the point that make partnerships. So if you make a mistake, fix it. If you make a judgment call that wasn't, that wasn't what our client wanted, and sometimes those lines are kind of blurry. Sometimes a client is mad about something that someone else wouldn't be mad about. So do the work, take accountability, try not to be defensive. You may feel defensive inside, but don't let your client know that. Think of your job as making your client shine. So if you make a mistake, the best thing you can do is apologize, and focus on the partnerships. If you, like when it comes to focusing on partnerships and not the money, if you make a hard line about money, it may break the partnership. Sometimes, and I'm not telling you to not get, ask for the fee that you deserve, but sometimes when you take a break, it means a lot to your client and they'll continue to give you work. I'll give you an example. We have a client that called me a few months ago and said, I'm not able to pay you on files that don't end up funding. So say we do a signing as a signing agency, we've signed the notary, we handled the quality control, everything on our end is complete, but the borrower ends up canceling. They fill out the right to cancel and they cancel the loan. If that happens, she said, I can't pay you for that job, which means that as a signing agency, we've already paid you as a notary. We're never going to say we can't pay you, right? We're going to pay you, but we're not going to get paid. So we lose out on all of the manpower, right? How much it costs us to do the signing, as well as your fee. So we lost that, right? But she said, if you do that, I'm going to pay you more per file, right? So we're losing a little bit to gain more in the long run. So think about that when it comes to the money bit of it. I'm not saying do that every time. I'm not saying for you to necessarily choose that as your business model, but we've done that and it's gained some loyalty and some clients that they know that we're in it for the partnership, right? That we are all, looking to make a little money on this, and that sometimes there's a cost of doing business, but ultimately we're going to be your partner in the long run, right? So that's my 2 cents on that. Okay, that's it for today. When it comes to the slideshow portion, I actually do want to show you a few documents. So let me stop sharing my screen in order to pull up these forms, and then we'll look at these docs together. So I'm not actually done. Hold on, let me pull up these docs. Okay, so I talked about knowing those critical documents. I want to real quickly show you the forms that you need to know. Now, if you want to see these forms, I will send you this little package of just these forms. But the forms that I think are important for you to know, the settlement statement. Settlement statements may not always look like this. They may look a little different, but this is an example of a settlement statement. This is the breakdown of all of the fees, charges, credits that go to the borrower or that are a part of this loan. So you don't need to know what every single one of these means. In fact, I don't think that you need to at all. Really, you need to know where this form is located. You need to be able to show this form to them. You need to know where it's signed. And at the bottom is really, to me, what you're going to get asked a lot of times, or what you might deal with in other documents, which is the amount to or from the borrower. So in this fake set of documents that I have, the bottom, the money is going to the borrower. So in this case, the borrower is getting $26,000. If it was the borrower owed money, it would say due from borrower. So knowing this information. So sometimes in a loan, the borrowers are getting money back, or sometimes they're paying money to get the loan completed, right? To fund the loan. So you want to make sure to review this bottom bit so you kind of know ahead of time what the borrowers owe or what they're getting back. But here's the settlement statement. You should know at least what this looks like. If the borrowers have questions on the actual charges, they need to talk to someone else, right? They need to talk to their loan officer, most likely, or an escrow agent. Okay, so I'm going to quickly skim through them to find the other important document that I wanted to show you. Here's one of them. the closing disclosure. Get to know this one. This one's an important one to the borrowers, right? So the first page has kind of the real meaty, good information that you need to make sure that the signers review. The loan amount, their interest rate, 3%. Yeah, right. Wish we could get a 3% right now. 3% was during COVID time, right? That's when you could get a 3% interest rate. Maybe soon, one day, in a few years. Right now, no, not for a 30-year fixed loan, right? But anyways, enough crying about that. It talks about the monthly payment, principal plus interest, right? It kind of breaks down what that's going to look like if there was mortgage insurance or an escrow account, property taxes. And then again, it has that number here. That number, which is the cash to close, so either to or from the borrower, the settlement statement will always be the most accurate, but it typically matches the closing disclosure. So you need to know where this form is, what this form is. Again, you don't need to know all the details. So like pages 2 through 4, you don't need to know that breakdown. You're not going to know every time, and it may be different. It's going to be different every single loan, but you're going to need to know that first page at least so you can show the signers that information, and you need to know where it's signed. So in this case, it's going to be on this last page, page 6. Okay, I'm quickly going through these because, like I said, you need to know the critical documents well. The other documents you're going to get to know, but these ones you need to, I would say, know going into it. Okay, so here's the right to cancel. So right to cancel is only going to be present in a refinance of a primary residence. Okay, primary residence refinance. Purchase, second home, investment property, not going to have them. But a HELOC will have a refi or will have a notice of right to cancel. So if it's a primary residence, HELOC or refinance, they're going to have this form. So it's an important form in general. Basically, it's a federal law that the signer gets 3 days, a 3 business day right to cancel. They count Saturday. So where they can make sure that this is what they want, right? So they have 3 days to think about it. But what you need to know about this form is you need to make sure these dates are filled in. So if they're pre-printed here, but if they're blank, it's your responsibility to make sure they're filled in. And a lot of new notaries just simply don't know that. Or they don't know, they think right to cancel. Oh, the signer is not going to cancel. The signer might say, oh, we're not going to cancel. So they skip this form. There's a lot of reasons why this form might come back with errors, but it's your responsibility to make sure that top date is filled in, the date of this transaction, as well as the actual right to cancel date, which is going to be within this box. Now, every once in a while, you'll get a form that doesn't look like this. This is really the standard for this form, but there's always going to be a transaction date, which will be the date of the signing, and then there's always going to be a second spot for a right to cancel date. So there's a right to cancel calendar. If you're not familiar with a right to cancel calendar, put it in the chat, let me know, and we'll send that to you. But you're going to always want to review that because remember, Saturday counts with the right to cancel as well as federal holidays, right? I don't celebrate any holidays, so I need the calendar because I never know when a holiday is going to come. But you need to make sure these 2 dates are filled in. And that they don't sign this, I wish to cancel. That's a big, major issue, right? Because if they're signing all these forms, most likely they're not going to cancel at the same time that they're signing them. They need to sign at the bottom. So if you're unfamiliar with this form, we actually have a video just on this form. Watch that video. And we cover in several videos. This is just a really important document. Okay, let's keep going. Oh, I skipped it. The note. The note is the most important document for the signer, right? This is their promise to pay. This is a form that you should get to know. You don't have to answer questions about why certain figures or information is in it, right? That's not your job as a notary signing agent, but you should for sure be able to answer the what questions. If the signer says, hey, what's my interest rate? You should be able to point to this here, item 2 on the note, right? Or what's my monthly payment, principal and interest? Right here, item 3, right? So you should get to know the note. It's the most important signing or document for the signer, and make sure that it is signed correctly. Just a quick notary tip, make sure they sign. The note is like almost never dated. Very, very rarely will a note need to be dated. And it's never notarized, which is kind of funny, right? Because it's so important, such an important document, and it's not notarized. It just is what it is. But you're going to see the seal. What does that seal mean? When the word seal is attached to a signature line, that just means the signer's signature, right? So don't stamp it. You stamp it, you're going back, you're getting it signed again, right? But just have the signer sign it. Now, if it says signature and date, have them date it, but it's very, very rare. So you're going to need to know the note. Like I said, I can send you a little sample. If you need this, I can send you a sample with just these documents. Do you like our fake bank name, Bank of the Best? Anyways, okay, next important document is the deed of trust. You need your deed of trust to know the basics of it. It's a big document. It's typically 8 to 15 pages. You need to know the information that's in bold, the information on the first 3 pages. This has how ownership of the property is held. So right here, I really should have gotten my highlighter tool out. Sorry, guys. I told you I'm struggling today. But this is the ownership, the way ownership of the property is held. That's important to the signers. The rest is really standard. There's information about the signer's loan, right? The information in bold, you see that kind of bolded print there. You have some information. The rest is standard though. It'll have the legal description. It'll have their APN number. It'll have their address. Make sure that information is reviewed and the signers know that it's correct. Now, if they have questions, if they're the very rare signer that's going to read all of this and have questions on it, you can refer them to their loan officer. Don't answer questions about why something is. That's not your responsibility. If you understand what these different points are, you can explain according to what it says. But if they're asking a specific on their loan and why it is a certain way, that's not your job, right? So you just need to get to know the basics of the what, right? What and where. Okay, that's the deed of trust. Now, those are the basic forms that you need to know. Or not the basic, they're not basic, the critical forms you need to know. The rest are either self-explanatory or you get to know them or ask questions. So if you're interested in that little package of just those documents, if you're on the live class, put it in the chat. If you're watching this later on YouTube, you know who to email. You email training@c2csignings.com or Virginia@c2csignings.com, and we'll put that in the description.